Dad mocked her at the wedding, until the groom revealed she commands every soldier there.
The weight of stars. The moment Laura Wolfe walked into the wedding hall in her simple cream dress, her father's laugh cut through the string quartet like a blade. "There she is," Richard Wolfe announced to the table of decorated generals and senators he'd been performing for all evening, his voice carrying that particular brand of cruelty he'd always disguised as humor. "My daughter, 34 years old, no husband, no career worth mentioning, just Laura." The laughter that followed was polite, confused, obligatory. The kind of laughter people offer when they're not sure if something is a joke or a confession. Laura Wolfe smiled, the same smile she'd worn in 127 degrees of Afghan heat, the same smile she'd worn when her convoy was ambushed 40 miles outside Kandahar, the same smile she'd worn when she had to write letters home to mothers who would never hold their sons again. She sat down, she smoothed her dress, she sipped her water, and she said nothing. Her younger brother, Daniel, the groom, had chosen a military chapel for his wedding. 200 guests filled the white-draped chairs, a sea of civilians and politicians, and scattered among them, quietly, without ceremony, men and women who sat just a little too straight, who scanned rooms out of habit, who had the particular stillness of those trained to be deadly. Richard Wolfe had no idea how many of them were watching his daughter. He had no idea about a lot of things. The rehearsal dinner the night before had been the opening act. Richard had cornered Laura near the bar, 2 fingers of scotch in hand, the practiced looseness of a man performing relaxation. "You know," he'd said, "Daniel invited some very important people, Pentagon people. I'd appreciate it if you didn't make things awkward." "Awkward how?" Laura had asked. "You know how." He'd waved his glass vaguely at her existence. "The army thing, whatever you do, people don't know how to talk to you, Laura. You make them uncomfortable." She had looked at her father for a long moment, the man who had once called her enlisting, the most selfish thing she'd ever done, who had refused to attend her commissioning ceremony, who had told her mother, loud enough to hear, that no man would ever want a woman who smelled like gun oil and ambition. "I'll be on my best behavior," she'd said. And she meant it, in ways he couldn't begin to understand. The ceremony was beautiful. Daniel married his bride, Claire, as sunlight collapsed through stained glass and painted everyone in shades of gold. Laura sat in the front row, and when Daniel caught her eye at the altar, something passed between them, the shorthand of siblings, the specific gratitude of a younger brother who knew more than anyone exactly who his sister was. He almost told everyone right then. Laura shook her head slightly. Not yet. He grinned and looked back at his bride. The reception was where Richard Wolfe truly came alive. He had the floor, the audience, the scotch. He moved from table to table like a man who believed attention was his birthright. And at the head table, with the microphone finally in his hand for the father of the groom's speech, he reached the peak of himself. "Family is everything," he began, and the room warmed. "Daniel has always made me proud, a successful architect, a brilliant man, a loving partner." He raised his glass to Claire's tearful parents across the room. "But every family has its..." He paused for effect, smiling in Laura's direction. "Its characters." Light laughter. The room didn't know where this was going. "My daughter Laura has always done things her own way, marched to her own drummer," he chuckled. "Literally, I suppose. She joined the army over my very loud objections." More laughter, nervous now. "And all these years later, she's still..." He searched for the word, performing the search. "Finding herself." He lifted his glass. "To Daniel and Claire, may they build something real." The toast was drunk. The implications settled like smoke. Something real, something Laura never had. Laura's glass touched her lips. Steady hands, always steady hands. It was the man, 3 tables back, who moved first. Command Sergeant Major Theodore, Iron Ted, Akafar had served 26 years. He had survived Fallujah, Mosul, 2 IED strikes, and 1 congressional hearing. He did not have a short fuse. He had no fuse at all, really, just a vast, patient stillness that made younger soldiers nervous in the way that deep water makes you nervous. He stood up. The room shifted. Theodore Ackhaffer was not a small man, and he did not stand the way civilians stand, loosely, casually. He stood the way flagpoles stand. But before he could speak, Daniel took the microphone from his father's hand. The groom, the man of the hour. "Dad," Daniel said, and his voice was the kind of quiet that fills a room better than volume ever could. "I'd actually like to say something about my sister." Richard Wolfe blinked, smiled the smile of a man who believes he's about to be agreed with. "Laura," Daniel said, looking at her across the decorated tables, the candles, the flowers, "I want to tell everyone here who you are, if that's okay." Laura set down her glass. Something shifted behind her eyes. "Daniel." "Please," he said. "I've been quiet about this for years because you asked me to be, but I'm done." He looked out at the room. "My sister has been in the United States Army for 12 years. She served 3 combat deployments. She earned the Silver Star in Afghanistan for leading her unit out of an ambush that should have killed everyone, including herself." He paused. "She declined the press coverage. She asked that the commendation be kept private." The room was absolutely, perfectly still. "She came home from her 3rd deployment and went back to school, got her master's, then went back in because," his voice caught, "because she told me once that the mission wasn't finished and she couldn't explain what that meant to someone who hadn't been there, but she couldn't stop." He looked at his father. "That's not finding herself, Dad. That's something else entirely." Richard Wolfe had the expression of a man watching a magic trick he can't yet explain. "I should also mention," Daniel continued, his voice steadying into something proud and bright, "that my sister is, as of 8 months ago, Brigadier General Laura Wolfe, the youngest female general officer in her branch. And the reason there are 43 active duty soldiers at this wedding, some of whom flew in from 3 different continents on their own leave, is because each of them served under her command." He looked around the room. "And when they heard Laura Wolfe was going to be somewhere, they wanted to be there too." Across the room, without coordination, without a signal, without anything except the knowledge of who she was, they stood. Theodore Ackhaffer first. Then a young captain near the back, who had been a corporal when Laura had pulled him from a burning vehicle outside Kunda's. Then a staff sergeant who had followed her through 14 months, in conditions that would have broken most people. Then a major who had once told his wife, "If that woman ordered me to walk through fire, I'd ask what temperature." One by one, table by table. 43 people standing, not at attention. This was a wedding, not a parade, but standing the way people stand when they want someone to know that they see them. That they've always seen them. Richard Wolfe made a sound. It wasn't words. Laura stood slowly. She wasn't in uniform. She wore a cream dress and her mother's pearl earrings and the kind of understated heels that suggested she'd thought about this outfit with care. She looked like someone's daughter, someone's sister. She walked to where Daniel stood with the microphone and he handed it to her, and she looked out at the room, at the standing soldiers, at the seated civilians who were starting to understand the shape of what they were seeing, at her father, whose face had collapsed into something she didn't have a word for yet. "I never wanted this," she said, and her voice was calm because her voice was always calm. "The recognition, the ceremony of it, you learn very fast in the field that the point of what you do is the thing itself, keeping people alive, bringing them home, finishing the objective. The credit is noise." She paused. "But my brother asked me for one thing, and I've been saying no to him for years because I thought I was protecting him from something." She looked at Daniel. "I think I was actually protecting myself." She turned back to the room. "I am proud of my service," she said, and the simplicity of it landed like stone in still water. "I am proud of every person in this room who put on a uniform and went somewhere hard because someone asked them to. I am proud of the work we did that no one will ever read about, and the decisions we made in seconds that we'll spend years thinking about." Her eyes found her father's, not with heat, not with triumph, with something more dangerous than either, with clarity. "And I will not apologize for it. Not to anyone, not ever." The room erupted. Not politely, not the restrained applause of a wedding reception caught off guard. Genuinely. The kind of sound that happens when a room full of people, simultaneously recognizes something true. Later, after the cake, after the dancing, after Daniel had spun his bride across a floor lit with fairy lights, after the soldiers had drifted into easy conversation with civilians who now wanted to ask them everything, Richard Wolff found his daughter on the terrace. The night was cool. Laura had her arms around herself, not from cold, but from the habit of self-containment she'd spent 12 years perfecting. "Laura." She turned. Her father looked older than he had inside. The scotch, she thought, or the evening, or something else. "I didn't know," he said. "I know you didn't. You never told me." She held his gaze. "You never asked." He opened his mouth, closed it. For the first time in her living memory, Richard Wolff had nothing to perform for. No audience, no glass, no punchline to land. Just the specific, excruciating discomfort of a man who has been wrong for a very long time and is only now doing the arithmetic. "I said terrible things," he said finally. "Yes. About your career, about your—" "Yes, Dad. I was wrong." She watched him, waited. "I think," he said slowly, and his voice was smaller than she'd ever heard it. "I think I was afraid of you, when you enlisted. I didn't understand it and I couldn't control it, and you were so certain, Laura. You were always so certain about everything, and I didn't know how to be your father if I couldn't. If I couldn't be the one who knew better," she finished. He looked at the ground. Yes. The night stretched between them. Somewhere inside, a slow song had started, and Laura could hear the low murmur of the reception, the distant clink of glasses, the world continuing without needing them. "I'm not looking for an apology," she said finally. He looked up. "I'm not," she repeated. "I spent a long time being angry about the commissioning ceremony, about what you said to Mom, about tonight." She exhaled slowly. "But I commanded people who had 6 seconds to make decisions that decided who lived. You learn not to spend time on things that are behind you." She paused. "You're behind me, Dad. The version of this that was going to break me, that's already behind me." He nodded. Something in him visibly, quietly broke. "But if you want to know me," she said, "I'm still here. I'm still your daughter. And I would like very much to have a father who actually knows what I do and why I do it." Her voice didn't shake. "If you think you can do that." The silence was long. "I'd like to try," he said. She nodded once, the way she nodded when a subordinate gave the right answer under pressure, not praise, but recognition. "Then try," she said. She went back inside. Later still, Theodore Ackheffer found her at the bar, nursing a water, watching Daniel and Claire dance. "General," he said. "Sergeant Major," she smiled. "You drove 10 hours for this wedding." 7, he corrected. "Hit good traffic through Kentucky." "You drove 7 hours for my brother's wedding." "I drove 7 hours," he said simply, "because you asked me if I was coming and I said yes." She looked at him. "Ma'am," he added, with the particular Ackheffer inflection that turned the word into an entire paragraph. She laughed, a real one, the kind that only came when her guard was fully down, and it transformed her face into something young and surprised and entirely human. "Thank you," she said, "for standing." "General Wolff," he said, and the ease dropped for just a moment, and beneath the veteran and the sergeant and the steady man was just someone who meant something completely. "We were always standing. You just didn't always let us show it." Across the room, Richard Wolff watched his daughter laugh with a man who had followed her to war and back, and he tried to understand the shape of the life she'd built without him. Enormous, real, full of people who chose her not because of blood or obligation, but because of who she was. He thought about all the years he'd spent underestimating a woman who commanded armies. He thought, "I almost missed this." He thought, "I still have time." If Laura Wolff's story stirred something in you, the kind of quiet, unshakable certainty that doesn't need applause to keep going, then you understand exactly what this story is really about: the power of knowing who you are when no one else does. Share this story with every woman who has ever been underestimated in a room she already owned. Tag someone who leads without needing the credit. And if this hit close to home, drop a military in the comments and tell us who stood up for you when it mattered most. Follow for more stories that honor the people the world overlooked until it couldn't anymore.